Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second Late Night with Liz. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a nurse on TikTok that made a little bit of a mess for themselves when they posted a TikTok right after their patient died. They had a very emotional reaction to it, and it was not like overly well received by the internet. She's gotten some backlash, and it's kind of a mess. I wanted to talk about it because it does bring up a really good discussion point of like, is this something that we should be talking on social media about our patients passing away? Is this like, was this okay? Was this cringe? Kind of where do we stand? Obviously, I'm the authority on all things. So, and you guys can help me vote. We'll kind of rally around it and we will discuss it. We're also going to be talking about things that actually happen, like as a nurse, that happen after you have a patient that passes away. What does that process actually look like? This isn't something we learn about a lot in healthcare. And from talking about this with people who aren't in healthcare, I know it's kind of like morbidly interesting, as well as things to help cope with what happens after your patient dies and kind of the process after it. So, if you are new here, welcome. I'm Liz. I'm a family nurse practitioner. I have a lot of opinions and I do healthcare comment on the internet. And if you're watching live, hello, thank you for being here. Let me know. Give me an emoji of how you're feeling on this fine evening. We'll go with that. That'll be different. I was going to say where you're from, but everyone does where you're from. We'll do an emoji of your current feeling. My current feeling would be I don't know if they have, it would probably be the emoji where the person is like this. Bedtime it's been something else. It has been something else. Hello, Beck. Stoked about this. I am glad. Welcome. Hey, peoples. Hello, Thomas. Nurse Scott. Can't wait to see it. Thanks for being here. OB Nurse Chelsea. Glad to be here tonight. Sorry I missed the last live. I mean, I will hold it against you forever. If you cannot miss any of them. Obviously, that's the rule. Hello. Who said Kate? Hello, hello, hello. We have angelic feelings. People are feeling angelic. I'm happy for you. SC, I'm going to say, pretend that's how you say it, is feeling feisty. I enjoy that. Nurse Scott is feeling a wee bit tired. OB Nurse Chelsea feels very studious. And Deanna says, I'm a new grad nurse about to start work and I'm so excited for this. Good. I hope this is helpful for you. I also do have a whole video that is strictly dedicated to oh, everyone's saying Nurse Scott is sick. I'm so sorry you're sick, Scott. I hope you feel so much better. Hi, Jerry. I have a whole video that is dedicated, Deanna, to dealing and coping with patients passing away and kind of the process surrounding that, and ways to kind of cope with it, right? Because we aren't taught how to cope with it. And this is a really weird thing. And it took me a really long time to realize this, that when I come home from work and like my husband would ask me, he's like, hey, how was your day? And I could be like, oh, like nobody died, but like someone dying was an actual possibility during my day. And it took me a while to realize that that's really weird, right? That in healthcare, we can go to work and like people can legitimately die. Like we see horrific things often every day, and it really can happen kind of like wherever you are. So I think we need to have more discussion about that. I absolutely welcome any of your input from the chat of things that have helped you as you have dealt with patients passing and just like the grief that you kind of see. No one, if we're in the healthcare setting, very rarely, unless you work in like, I don't know, fillers, like, then are you having people who come in and they're very like, all your interactions are happy. I feel like labor and delivery might also be like, hopefully mostly happy, but most of us deal with a lot of trauma. Even the happy places deal with trauma. So if you have any coping tips, please, please, please leave them below and we'll talk about them, or in the comments if you're watching it later, in the chat if you're watching it live. And I will leave that video linked that I made that kind of goes through the ways that I dealt with it, because I really needed to. The first job that I worked was med surg, liver GI, and people died all the time, like all the time. We probably had someone like every night, probably, like we were doing things. Like we were also the palliative care unit. Not officially. I didn't know that when I got my job. Always ask what happens to the comfort care patients. And we ended up kind of being like the unofficial, if they're not going to make it to hospice, they're going to come to our floor, like get them out of the, like other floors would send them to us. They would send them up from the ER. So we had a lot of patients who we would do comfort care, and then they would pass away on our unit. So do always ask that too. Nurse Scott says he's having a bad back pain day. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, bad pain day. I made up the back. I feel like we talked about maybe it was your back, but either way, I'm sorry you were having a bad pain day. Those are miserable. And I hope we can be a distraction. I hope. So let us do, oh, I didn't plan for this very well. Hang on one second. Let me see. I'm going to do a poll and we'll see if any of you are already familiar with this TikTok and how you feel about it. All right. I also have to notify my my Rachel. What were we calling her? My second opinion. Like, are you here? Please be here. The Crown to Life said 1990 to 1995, worked in oncology. Death was every other day. Yeah, it is a lot. Let's see. I didn't, if you are just joining us, leave us an emoji while I get my life straight. Should I have done this before? Absolutely. I'm sorry. Leave us an emoji of how you are feeling. I am scrambled. We can also see I'm scrambled by my beverage choices. Okay. So we have a huge thing of water because I haven't had any water like all day. And then I have coffee that is like a quarter of the way drink. And then I have a White Claw that's like 3/4 of the way consumed. And I brought them all. I was like, I have to go live. I'm going to bring everything up. So it's been an interesting last 2 hours of my life, apparently, if that is what my beverage game is looking like. I have recently discovered White Claw. I like it. I don't know what that says about me, but I really like it, particularly the tangerine flavor. Okay, you're probably like, please stop talking and stop talking and get to what we need. Okay, I found the poll feature. Have you seen the TikTok with the nurse after a patient death? Yes. No. Oh, no, we want to say, is it cringe? What do you think of the TikTok? Cringe? What are our options? What should our options be? We have cringe. We have appropriate and eye-opening for the public. And then we have I don't TikTok. Will it let me do it? Oh, appropriate and eye-opening. I really should not be allowed on the internet. I am a hot mess. Okay, the poll is up. It took me 12 years, but we got there. The poll is up. Let's pop out this chat. That way I can see it later. Okay, perfect. Wonderful. One day I will figure out how to internet. Angelica is having anxiety with nursing school. I'm really sorry. Let's see. Virtual hug. You got this. Good. Thanks for consoling one another. We have hello, Nurse Adrian, feeling hearts. Janelle Pearson is feeling laughter. Oh, this is how I feel a lot of the times. I go between like laughter and then the insane smile. And then I'm glad you're ending it with happiness. Perfect. OB nurse Chelsea says in labor and delivery, things don't usually go bad, but when they do, it's catastrophic for everyone involved. Nobody is prepared emotionally because it's where life begins, not ends. It's a common misconception about OB. For sure. I have had some very dear friends have really, really the worst things happen in labor and delivery. And it has very much opened my eyes to how helpful you can be, like how one traumatic it would be from a nursing standpoint to see that in that setting, but also like how much you help when patients are going through something like that. White Claw is great. Your flavor preference is questionable. I hope everyone is having a lovely evening. Do let me know what flavor you like then. I really do like the like mandarin flavor, like, or whatever it's called, like the orange flavor. Okay, let's take a look at this TikTok. Okay. Okay, go there. Okay, add this. Perfect. So I'm not going to play the actual TikTok because she has since deleted her account. So I'm assuming, and it has music behind it. So other people have like reacted to it. They've like a lot of people have duetted it and like made fun of it, which I think personally is like kind of mean. But basically what happened in this TikTok was it says newsletter, or why am I reading a TikTok? Guys, it's been that kind of day. I've grabbed obviously something. One of my beverage combinations is not working for me. This nurse playing to very, very like dramatic move like music that I think is saying something about like I will overcome. She props the phone up on obviously one of those like side banister handrail things at the hospital. She's at work and it says I lost a patient today. It has all the music, and then she goes over, she kind of like stands against the handrail and then like bends over and is like upset, and I think she's crying in the video, and it says shake it off, you have 5 more hours, and she kind of like does a walk around thing of and looks like very upset. And it was very dramatic. It was very it looked a little bit, I think a lot of people were making fun of it because it seemed like you had to set it up, right? Like even if you're having that moment, like would you have that moment in the middle of like a hallway? Would you set your phone up for it? So I see why people thought it was cringe. However, I think it was cringe, but it opened a really good door to a lot of conversation, that I hope we will be able to now have tonight. So in the polls, let's see. Let's see in the polls. Oh man, friends, this is not my day. Now I don't know how to, okay. I was like, I don't even know how to find this. Find the poll that I made. Cringe is 30%, appropriate and eye-opening is 15%, and 55% of you don't TikTok. I TikTok in sprees. Okay. I make a bunch of TikToks, I release them, and then I come back a month later without having dealt with it. So I I can't. My TikTok is very eclectic. Also, it's mostly people doing crafts and then yarn and then like weird people telling weird stories. I was like, "Oh, okay, this is fine." Amy Joseph. So Amy says, I can understand the desire to show this, but it feels more staged than raw. I agree with this. Annette says, I'm astounded by the attention seeking posts. I'm less astounded by like that it's attention seeking, like, because I guess I get, in my opinion, that some people process things in a very public way, right? Like this would not be something that I would probably do, but I don't usually, I'm not a like public displays of emotion type of human. Like I get that what she was doing, but it also is kind of exploitative of the patient. Like it just doesn't feel like real life. It does feel like she's kind of grabbing for attention. Um, and so I think like idea solid. Do we need to talk more about this? Could this have been better done I think in a car afterwards? Yes. Do I think it's exploiting like a particular patient? Not really. I mean, you don't know what patient this person was. It could have been anyone. But it should not have probably happened at work. It shouldn't have happened in the hallway because this isn't really kind of what we would be seeing right in real life. Nurse Scott says, I found the video. It's dramatic and staged. But have you seen what's on TikTok? And I think that's a really good point. Nurse Scott, as always, is like my string on my like wild ideas balloon. He's like, come back down to earth. And I think that's a really good point. For the platform that she was posting it on, you have to be dramatic and you have to be over the top. And it kind of just got a lot of cringe from, I think there's also like a lot of nursing sentiment behind it where we're like, well, I don't go and do that. You know what I mean? Like I'm not out there crying in a hallway. Like, why are you filming this intimately odd thing and putting it out there? But that is kind of what the platform requires. I just wish she hadn't done it at work, in the middle of work, in a hallway, maybe in a car, maybe afterwards. Nurse Adrian says, of course it's staged and so what? All of social media is staged. Also a very excellent point. And that might be that's another good way to look at it. Obviously, don't have a very strong opinion on this. I mostly wanted to come on here and just like talk about it. I guess my opinion is I wish it happened in the car later, but it did get a lot of people talking. Obviously, we are here. There are 98 of you here watching me talk about this. So it's opening the conversation. And for that, I am honestly really grateful because this is something that I don't feel like we talk about a lot as healthcare people at all, is what kind of the setting is surround how the hospital's like a revolving door and we don't process things really well, right? Nurse Adrian also says people need to look in the mirror and ask themselves, why am I being so judgmental? I thought a lot of that too, honestly, when everyone was like, I thought it was really inappropriate that everyone was like making fun of her. Like there's a difference between looking at something and being like, like that is like, I might not have chosen that, but I see your message. And then there's a difference between that and like, I hate part of the reason I like avoid TikTok sometimes, a lot of the times, is because people just make fun of like they'll do wet it and then they'll just make fun of it. And there were a lot of posts making fun of this person to the point where she felt awful and deleted her entire account. So I hate that. Who said Kate says that's true. The number of times I've bawled my eyes out in my car over a patient dying is countless. Absolutely. And I think that's why I want to like, that's why I did want to talk about it. And why I did think part of the post was like good because sometimes you can think it's like just you know what I mean? And you do feel a lot. You feel a lot of like, I feel like the emotions that she carried in the video were relatable. It was just kind of how it played out that was like, perhaps not. Nurse Adrian said, well, the fact is being used as a topic to get views by creators. Exactly. We're here. Teresa Madison said staged, but it resonated with me. And that is a lot of, I think 30% of you agreed. That, you agreed with that. Yana Hoob said, at least you could feel something, which is actually a very true point. I think at a certain point, you really do kind of start to get a little bit like, I don't say you would ever become numb to it, but like, I remember in the beginning when I had patients died, I remembered like everything surrounding those situations. And after I'd been doing it for like a year or two, it was like, it had to be really like, it had to be pretty traumatic for me to really remember the details of it going forward. Brianna said, sorry to repeat, but I think this is an important point. Other professions do this exact same thing and don't get this reaction. If anything, they get sympathy and heart. We're not superheroes. I think that's a very good point. Also, Nurse Adrian RN says, yeah, I'm like literally dead inside for the last 3 weeks. I feel you. That was a huge part of, why I had to get off of my first unit and something they don't talk about, right? Like they do not talk about this. Always ask this about, and I always tell new grads or anyone getting a new job, ask about how many people pass away in these settings, right? Because this is something, if you're someone who that's going to like really affect you, then that might not be like a good unit for you. You know what I mean? Boho, hello, Boho. What's interesting is that this was all okay to do during the height of COVID. That is very true, which is where I think these things started with nurses and TikTok. Absolutely. And I do think there is, a certain weird standard type thing where people are like, oh, people I don't know, people seem to expect people in healthcare to be these like mutants who like can just move on. And it's weird if you have feelings. And the tide does turn pretty quickly on healthcare workers. Like, oh, it was fine during COVID. Now it's not fine. Very, very odd. Okay. So now that we've kind of just discussed that briefly and she's introduced the topic to us, and we've brought up, don't record something like this while you're at work. Wait till you get to your car and maybe discuss it there. But we appreciate her for opening up this conversation and allowing us to happen. So that's kind of where we can be. And don't make fun of people, friends. If you don't like something that you see on social media, rather than making fun of it, right? Rather than being like, oh, because we have to look at what her intent probably was. Okay. What do you think she put this out in the internet for? I think she probably put it out there because she was having huge feelings or she had, even if it wasn't that day, like what if I saw a lot of people speculating, oh, this is like a made up situation. But even so, I bet she has had those feelings before. And I bet almost all of us have also had those feelings. And why can't we just look at that and be like, I think that's how you were trying to express those huge feelings, right? Like maybe it's not the way that I would have done it. Exactly, Nurse Adrian. The public seriously needs to start deploying empathy and compassion for healthcare workers. It borders on sociopathy. It really does. Why can't we just and if you don't like it, just scroll past. And yes, Nurse Scott, it does get likes. And I think I mean, I think all of us have probably, if you're in social media, have probably posted things from time like now and again, even if we don't want to admit it. I'm sure I know I have, where you like make something seem a little bit more dramatic. Except in this case, it's pretty dramatic. So um, let us talk briefly, or I guess not briefly, that's the whole point of the live tonight, about what happens after your patient passes away. And this process might be different everywhere. I have only worked in one health system as a nurse, like who actively, thankfully, nobody, passed away in my nurse practitioner office. But from a patient point of like from patients passing away, I I was only in one health system. So this could be different where you are. And if you have a different experience or you just want to share your experience, I will share ones that I see as they're popping in. Um, it was essentially you after the patient passed away, you went in and you cleaned them up, like you kind of let the family have their time with them, and then you had to go in and you performed post-mortem care. Maybe we can at some point have a whole, if it's something anyone would be interested in, a whole different discussion on like how like post-mortem care and kind of things surrounding like just end of life. I think that could be an interesting conversation of how to hold conversations with families, how to actually perform postmortem care. Cause I don't know about you guys. Did you learn how to do postmortem care in nursing school? Cause I sure didn't. And then my unit, like I said, had a lot of mortality and I had no idea what I was doing. Very quickly out of school. I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? So if you'd like a conversation surrounding that, we can certainly have one. We won't tonight just for time's sake. But after you have cleaned up the patient, gotten them taken care of, you put them in the body bag. And then we called patient transport, and they actually came and they picked them up. And within and then they would come and clean the room, right? And you knew like the cleaning people were always like right there. They came in and they would clean the room. And depending on how quickly all of this happened, you were getting another admission. Usually at my hospital, you already had, as soon as the patient was, pronounced dead, they already had lined up an admission to fill that bed. And so pretty much as soon as while you're doing postmortem care, I have been doing postmortem care and I've been having the ER call me and be like, hey, we have your admission for you. I'm like, well, there's still someone in this bed, my friend. Like, we're gonna have to wait. And that was and then a lot of the times you were thinking, like, I was stressed about that. You know what I mean? So you've already experienced this situation, which might have been like traumatic, right? This might have been, I mean, if you deal with this a lot, you kind of learn like what is a good death or, cause it can be very peaceful, where, everything just feels very, it's not, not scary, just like their family is there. It's a loving thing, the patient's comfortable. And or it cannot be that, right? It can be very much not that. And so I've had lots of situations where it's been kind of traumatic. So you're like messed up in the head from that. I'm also thinking, right? Because all of this is happening and I did not work in the ICU. And even if you do work in the ICU, oftentimes you have many different patients, right? So you're thinking in the back of your mind while you're doing this and you're comforting the family, right? Because the family is also distraught and you're getting a phone call so you're like, okay, I need to go clean this, like do the postmortem care. This family is obviously like sometimes like very devastated and kind of like they're still there. Sometimes they want to be involved in postmortem care. The donation, like we had, I forget what it's called. They would call like the places for organ donors would be calling you, right, on the phone and asking you all these weird questions about weird things from their medical history that you have to then like in the middle of this awkwardly go and kind of like leave and answer all these medical questions and go through their chart because for some reason at our hospital the resident, I don't know if that's a normal thing for residents to do, but they didn't. In our case, we had to talk to the people who were doing tissue donations and they were trying to figure out like, can we use their corneas, what can we use? And then if you did find out like, oh, the family does, like the patient did want to be a organ donor but like nothing else we can really use, so we have to go get the ice and put it on their eyes and try to save their corneas. So now we're talking with those people. Meanwhile, the emergency room is calling you and they're like, hey, we have another person for this bed. And you're like, oh my gosh. And you're also thinking in the back of your mind, okay, I wonder how my other 4 patients or 5 patients are doing. Like, has anyone seen them in hours? Because I have just been in this room for like 2 or 3 hours now. And what is happening with them? Your phone's been going off the whole time, like buzzing, and you haven't been able to get it. So who knows what's happening there? And you're supposed to be providing like like you're cleaning someone up who is no longer alive. So it's just like a lot to process. And usually, as soon as you walk out of that room, the people come in to clean it. You are now looking up your new admission and you're checking on all your other patients to make sure, like, okay, are things still fine? Did my friends come in and like actually help me? And then your admission shows up. And it's like, there is no processing time, right? And admissions are usually a mess. So it's not like you're getting a patient if they're like shoving them it through the door that hard. Usually it's like it's going to take a wee minute to kind of like process. It's weird enough that you're in this room now and someone else is now in this bed and you were just in this room with a very different family and something very different was happening. And it is a lot. It is exhausting. It is like a revolving door. And it almost like after a while, it really kind of got me like, just you feel very much like this is a machine. Um, and it's awful. And Boho said, you have to act like nothing ever happened, put a smile on and greet the patient. Exactly. And one of the hardest things also is then going into your other patients' rooms and they're mad at you because they haven't seen you in a little while. And you can't really say, oh, your neighbor died. Like I always called my patients when they were saying like, oh, where were you? I was like, I was in your neighbor's room. Like your neighbor, like is blah, blah, blah. And you can't really be like, oh, well, like someone just died. So like, I know I didn't get you your ice chips, but like, let's, put things in perspective because technically it's not the patient's fault, right? That we're so short staffed that we don't have one person to kind of like, in the ideal world, right? You would kind of want one person to come in and sort of manage this, like be the person, like if you have a patient actively passing, maybe that's the only thing you should have to worry about. That seems humane. That's not the world we live in. But in that situation, like it's just hard because then you're like, are you kidding me? Not random people, patients who like are coming in and complaining at me that you didn't get X, Y, and Z. And it's, and I just want to go in the corner and like cry and process the fact, especially as a new nurse, when you haven't seen this happen all the time, where you're like, what, like I just watched someone die and then I bathed them and put them in a bag and now they're gone. Like it is so difficult to kind of wrap your mind around that in the beginning. And all of a sudden you have to act like it's totally, totally fine. OB nurse Chelsea said, sometimes I will tell patients that I was in an emergency and say no more than that. Nurse Scott would tell people, I'm pretty sure I've told at least one demanding person, sorry, it took me so long to get back to you. One of the other patients died. And Ball said, why can't you tell them? That was just our hospital policy, was we didn't, because the names of the patients were written on the hallway. It said like the patient's last name and then the nurse taking care of them in the room, and then our pager numbers so that anyone who walked by could go, like get help for them if they needed it. So it was considered like, I don't know, I think it was just the hospital's policy that you were not to disclose when things like that happened. I would say all the time, like, oh, one of your neighbors like was in an emergency, so I had to go deal with that. The worst case of this is a side tangent, but it just kind of shows you how it can be very difficult to like compartmentalize, like to handle some of those emotions. I had a patient in peds pass away. It was my patient. It was rough. I mean, it's always rough, but this was particularly rough. The parents were actually not there when it had happened. And we had a ton of complaints when the parents finally did get there, that it was too loud. They were like, we're trying to sleep. It was the middle of the night. And like a ton of parents came out of their rooms and it was very obvious what had happened. In this situation, just given you could see everyone knew the outcome. Like if the kid it didn't go well. So like everyone knew what had happened, and people were literally coming out and complaining and reported to my manager and like wrote a complaint against me. Two people wrote a complaint that I did not care that it was noisy in the hallway. So I was a bad nurse because I literally, when they said like, oh, this is really loud and disturbing. Can't you make them go somewhere else? And I just like looked at them and walked away, but that was rude, apparently. And so people are just like wild. Nurse Scott, I remember one family who was mad. And when I told them the other patient stopped breathing, they actually said, my mom pays her bills too. Unbelievable. Yeah. People are astonishing. Beck Daniel said, I'd like to say I'm shocked, but yeah. People are interesting. You see a lot of different people. Maricel said, future nurse here. I'm learning here. I'm so glad. If you have any questions for the chat or for me, Maricel, feel free to leave them regarding kind of like this topic. Betsy said, I remember the first death as a new grad. I was really in shock, and another nurse came up to me and asked if I was okay. And I thought that was nice. That is very nice. I feel like my unit was very young, and all of us were just like the blind leading the blind, right? We had absolutely no idea. None of us knew. I mean, I was the most senior person by the time I had been there like 3 or 4 months. Yikers. It was yikers. It is so strange. Tina says it's so strange to walk away from a death in one room, take a split second to breathe, and close my eyes just before walking to answer a call light. I wish dying patients were one-to-one. Dying patients should be one-to-one, because also you're working with the family, understandably, right? And a lot of the times you are also like providing a lot more. You're obviously there a lot with the family more. And if we do a video talking about comfort care, we can kind of talk about it. You're doing a lot of counseling, especially if the patient is having a lot of air hunger, on providing medications to help relieve that, while also explaining the family is usually very, very anxious that if they administer medicines that will actually help them with the air hunger, that it will make them stop breathing. And that might be what, like, that event might be the thing that actually leads to their passing. You're not ending their life. You are just making them comfortable. And some of the, that might be the inciting event. Like maybe it's hastening it a little bit, but that is what comfort care is. And a lot of patients, their families will really struggle with that, very understandably. I would have probably a really hard time doing something like that if I knew it was going to be ending a life of a loved one. So a lot of times as the nurse, you are the one that is doing that. You're in there. The family is, especially if it wasn't super expected, so anxious. Like you were just in there all the time. Understandably, this is a huge ordeal. We are one-to-one coming into the world. We should probably be one-to-one as we're walking through someone leaving it. But you're not. You have 5 patients. It's just, we need to, I wish that was something that was specified. Nurse Adrian said, definitely agree. The dying patient needs one-to-one, and hopefully a doctor knows what they're doing. Yes, hopefully. Yes. And is just liberal with allowing people medicine. And that's when it's helpful to have, a more senior nursing staff who knows a lot of things. I didn't know for a long time, in the death and dying process, like things that you can give patients that are going to help them. And sometimes the residents overnight don't know because, they're little interns who just got out of med school. And this is their first time dealing with a lot of this too. I remember I have walked quite a few residents through the process of coming in and like assessing the situation, because to no fault of their own, that was also not something that I was not prepared for. That was something that they were not prepared for. I just remember there was one resident one time who, there was an intern, they were like brand new out of med school, and it was their first rotation. And I was like, I need you to come and declare like a time of death. I'm pretty sure, I'm sure that this has happened. And this person, they were like, I can't do that. I'm like, well, you have to do that. Like, right. Like that is literally, I can't do it. So like, you have to come and do it. And they were just like, the realization of like what this was like, it was just hitting them. And it was just like, I was like, oh my gosh, this is just a lot. Who said, Kate, some people get super uncomfy when others have big emotions. Trust me, my mother-in-law was English. I know, a very traditionally reserved people. And yes, there are going to be people, there were people on our unit that like we just did not give comfort care patients to because they were phenomenal nurses, but they were much more technically inclined. And this does require a lot of being able to kind of handle people's emotions, which is also very draining, right? Which is another thing that makes it really hard to flip and all of a sudden go into your other patient's room and be like, oh, everything's fine. Let me handle this admission. When you have just absorbed a lot of feelings from your patients and now you have to move on, which is, I think, part of what this person was talking about in this TikTok, was kind of in my mind trying to demonstrate that this is something that I don't know if the public knows happens. At least that's the light I'm going to look at it with. Birdie J94 says, my grandma passed away unexpectedly after a routine procedure. I'm so sorry. It's so hard when it's so shocking. She was on a floor, not equipped to deal with patients who had passed. I'm so grateful for her roommate's grace with us in and out of the room. And that is so much harder when they do have a roommate. So much harder. And I'm sorry that it wasn't really set up in a way that people knew kind of what to do. We're not trained on it. And I hate that. Like, why don't we have something that kind of like teaches like why don't we have that? Why don't we have integrated with our cultural with like cultural competency, and like I think we should have honestly like a death and dying and coping course. And in that you could have like coping in healthcare, but also like death and dying and things like what happens, what are signs, like what does it really look like when your patient is dying, because it's very helpful as you become more used to that to be able to pull in the family and be like, hey, I really think you should probably go in there. Like, I think this is probably like we're in the moments to minutes part of things. So that you can go in and like say goodbye, so that what are things you can say to, like things to say, things to not say, how to perform post-mortem care, that, all these other things are going to happen. And also like the cultural practices of it, right? We worked in an area that like we had a ton of different patients, and there were a lot of different rituals after a patient's passing that I got to learn, but I had no idea before. And I'm sure I have gravely messed up some things in that process. And it's so simple. Like, why can't we just learn that? And so that when you can look at their just and ask like, oh, what is your, religious preference? Do you have a religious preference? Do you want us to, do any of the things after passing? And like just set that up. That was a side tangent, but I don't know why we don't teach more about that. Deanna says, have any of you had to inform the family of a family member's passing, or is that traditionally the doctor's role? So if any of you are providers who do have to announce this, let me know. I have inadvertently told, not like come right out and said, but when I was on the phone with this patient's family that I had, my pediatric patient who passed while her parents were not here, they were actually on the phone with me because I had been calling them to say I'm worried about them. I think you really need to I really think you need to come in. And a lot of this ended up happening like while we were on the phone, and it was kind of like one of those things where you're like, oh my gosh, like this is happening. She lost her heart rate like on the phone, so they like knew. And it was awful. That is, I don't know. I have never had to be the one to come and tell people that their family loved one other than that, which was not official. That was like probably an oops. But I think families also deserve to know, like it's a weird line. I have never had to tell people that someone they loved has passed away. And I have huge empathy for people who do. Usually, at least in where I have lived, I don't know in Pennsylvania because I'm not practicing as a nurse practitioner. In North Carolina, I mean, I was primary care, so like nobody was trying to do anything in my office, but I think it had to be a physician that announced time of death. And it might have been that way in Michigan too, where I was a nurse. I don't think our NPs could announce time of death or the PAs. I think it had to be a physician. And I think they're the ones who have to tell you. I don't think they can have someone else come out and say anything. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Usually our family was at the bedside, so it wasn't like a shock. I have had to call many patients when to let them know that a code was happening. Which if we didn't have enough, I if we didn't have enough, usually that was social work that I feel like would call when you hit the code button, all the people come running. But if we were having multiple codes at a time, sometimes we didn't have enough social workers. You had a social worker for like two, I think, in the emergency department. And if they both got called, then what are you going to do? So I have had to call and be like, hey, your family member is coding. You really need to get to the hospital like right now. Here we go. Let me see. It can be Nurse Adrian said at their hospital, it can be designated to the house supervisor nurse. Ooh, not want that job to have to go and tell people their loved one had passed. Nurse Scott said it's usually the doctor, but I always just thought it was tradition. No, I think there's like a legality to it. Like there has to be, and hospitals also like you to have a chain of command for responsibility because you are less likely to get sued. At least this is what they taught us in NP school. Was you are less likely to get sued if you come out and say the patient has passed and you have not delegated that to someone else because it assumes responsibility and the family members typically feel like you are owning it. Like, hey, your loved one was in my care and they are no longer living, like, and you're not delegating it to like an intern or something. I was told that is less litigious and that you will get sued less. So that was the answer from the legal perspective. I was like, wow, that's very, very harsh. Yikes. And I'm like, I hate how that's how we think. Brianna said, in Texas, NPs and PAs can pronounce a patient's passing. So I would imagine, thank you for that information. This is why you guys are so helpful. Thanks for all your interaction with the chat. I was hopeful that we would be able to have a good conversation around this because I've only had my experiences and I just appreciate you. You are the best internet humans and I appreciate you. If you're liking the video, also like it. Shameless plug to tell the YouTubes to send it to other people. And then give yourself a high five for being great. So I'm assuming if you can pronounce someone's passing, then you can tell a family member that they passed. But if any of you are NPs or PAs and you do inform patients, family members that their loved one has passed, please do tell us. In California, Nurse Adrian says, in California, the nurse supervisor can call it if no doctor is there, like multiple codes happening. Huh. Interesting. And this happens depending probably on your hospital a lot, especially if it's like a small community hospital and you really don't have that many other people, or your hospital is a hot mess. Mine was a hot mess, and we had multiple codes going like all the time, all the time. They couldn't even announce them over the overhead because it was like too constant. So I was like, that's a sign something probably should change. We should. They just kept like upping the acuity on the floor. So like on med surge, we would have like 5 or 6 confused patients who were all like, it was a GI floor. So everyone was having some kind of like a bowel regimen, or they had liver problems. So you're on a bowel regimen to get all that stuff out. So everyone was confused, pooping, unable to walk, and on like all these drips. Like you always had like, and we did like Crohn's. So you always had one person getting like chemo, one person on an insulin drip because we also did kidneys. So someone inevitably was coming in some kind of a diabetic situation. So you had a person on chemo, a person getting an insulin drip, this person getting blood because your liver patients, need tons of blood products. So you had 2 people getting blood. And then like the last person is coming off of alcohol or drug withdrawal. And you're also doing their detox. And that's your patient assignment. And then one of your patient dies. And you're like, how am I leaving this? So, but that was the situation at my hospital. Was they just kept like taking more and more hardcore patients, but they didn't decrease the number of patients that we had. And we were like, this is a lot. Like, this is a lot happening. And then we wouldn't have sitters. Sitters are like, who come and sit with your patients. And so then they would pull our techs. We only had 2, and we always had like 7 to 12 sitter needs, but there were only 2 of them. So they would take turns and they would rotate. And we were like, how? How? It's not really a one-to-one sitter if you're bopping around to all the 12 rooms. It's not how this works. But anyway, yeah, Beck, Danielle, confused and pooping. Med-surg, GI liver. I can't say I recommend it. Was it a character building experience? Yes, it was. Yes, it indeed was. Who said Kate? Yes. Thank you. Thanks for being my personal promo person. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, all the things. Thanks, Kate. Nurse Adrian, I'm so glad I caught you live. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. You've been so insightful in this conversation. Alex K. Hi, I love your channel. Oh, thanks. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. In the nursing home, Michaela says it was the nurse that informed the patients' families when they passed. Very interesting. Michaela, if you don't mind saying what state you're from, can I acquire that information out of you? That I wonder if that varies by state. I'm not sure, but that would make sense because you really don't have an on-site provider at nursing homes. You have people who, like, usually the physicians, the PAs, or the nurse practitioners, they round, like in the, they at some point during that week have to be available, but I would imagine that they wouldn't be there. Minnesota. Interesting. Okay. I don't know if Minnesota has progressive, like if they're fairly progressive in what they let their nurses do, but that's interesting. Thank you. Birdie J94 says, thank you for the stream. You're very welcome. I'm not in healthcare. And when I saw the TikTok, I thought it was kind of inappropriate. Really appreciate the other side of things. And it makes me appreciate nurses more. Well, thank you. We will take all the appreciation we can get. We appreciate it. It is, Boho said, it's hard to process when you're at work. Oh, okay. I think this was something sad. Liz, I'm very impressed with your ability to chat live and read the chat so efficiently. Thank you, Boho. One of my features of ADHD is the ability to do that, which is fine in situations like this. Very bad for like when I really need to focus on just one thing and my brain's like trying to escape literally from itself. Not as ideal, but thank you. It is a feature that comes in handy here. Nope. This is why I no longer work in the hospital. Yeah, so you don't have to deal with all of that. It's a lot. That's why I don't work in the hospital right now either. I'm Nurse Liz from Thomas Brown. I'm going to come up with some fun puns or words to say click instead of saying click, subscribe. We could say something more fun. Please do. All suggestions are welcome. When I was in Alita's stream from Legal Bites, I always would be like, I was like the one in the job, like, all right, we're going to do our morning stretch where you stretch and then your hand's going to come down and hit the like button. So we need something. That's the vibe we're going for. Okay. But it's not the morning. This is late night with Liz. Okay. Tuesdays. We're starting a new trend in case you missed it. Tuesday nights, we have a schedule. Okay. My second opinion, Rachel, who runs my life, said I should have a schedule. So the schedule is Tuesday night, late night with Liz, where it's me streaming. Just me. Thursday, I bring in buddies because I'm trying to make Nurse Tube. We have Law Tube. We have all the other things where we bring in a ton of friends and we just have great panels. Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern time-ish. Don't have a name for that one yet. Panel time. And then Saturdays are usually pre-filmed videos. Okay. That's our schedule. Carve out the time. This is where we're all going to be. Okay. You all have to be here. Like it's not acceptable. Like OB Nurse Chelsea missed one of our last lives and that's not okay. Okay. You all have to be here. Great. Birdie J said, take a shot and hit the like and subscribe button. What should I take my shot from? I have my coffee. I have my White Claw. I have my water. There's so many things. Nurse Tube. I'm totally down. I'm trying to make it a thing. I'm trying to make fetch happen. Okay. She says, I'm sorry. I will forgive you. It's okay. I'll forgive you. Caroline says, yes, Nurse Tube. Love it. Thank you. I think we have 4 members and not all of them have social media. So we're working on it. 1 shot from each. It's doable. I do need to take a break and actually drink something. Total nurse. I think you said too that ADHD was a feature of being a nurse, and it is because you can be like focusing on 12 different things. except for when you're like stuck in a very boring room and you can't leave. That was like my nightmare when you were like with someone who was, you couldn't do anything else, but you had to do so many other things. And my brain like could not handle it. Like if you were giving blood and you had to be in there for 15 minutes and all my brain could think about was like the 12 million other things that it needed to be doing, very difficult to contain. And then your patient's just like sitting there and like, oh, rough. And juggling multiple drinks. You know, my life. I moved in when I went to work as a nurse. I moved in. I had my coffee. I had my water, which was like a, you know, I acted like the hospital didn't have water. But I moved in. I had my lunchbox, which was really like this enormous box. Like some people brought a cute lunch to work. Like they're like, oh, at night I don't really eat. I'm like moving in. I'm like, well, here's half my fridge. I'm gonna put this down right here. It's fine. Deanna said, thank you to everyone in the chat. Yes, thank you, everyone in the chat. Any advice for a nervous new grad in general? Give me all of your pro tips. So if you guys in the chat have any tips for Deanna, a new grad, just give it time. Okay. It's going to be rough at first, which is probably not what you want to hear. But I'm going to give it to you straight. It's going to be rough at first. Learn from everyone. Everyone can teach you something, and give yourself a lot of grace in knowing that this is a huge transition. Nursing school kind of taught you the baseline. Uh, but you're going to learn a lot on the job, and just make the rest of your life as easy as possible. Do not pick up overtime and enjoy your life outside of work, because work is going to be a lot for a little while until you get used to it. Do not pick up extra shifts. Okay. If you need to make money, go be a nanny or something. Like nanny, you can make a lot of money as a nurse and a nanny because it sounds very fancy. Don't pick up more nursing shifts though. And, you know, maybe sell something on Etsy. I don't know, but don't pick up more shifts, because you really need that downtime in order to like, let your brain like chill and kind of like try to find a hobby. Okay. People, there's so many hobbies out there. Just go on like Instagram and just search for like crafts or something, or talk to me. I have like 12 billion hobbies because ADHD, and my brain, I do the thing where you like invest yourself fully in a hobby and get all of the equipment, only to like 3 months later be like, I never need to do that again. My husband loves it. Absolutely loves it. And I feel like we should start, all of the ADHDers who are ADHD craft hobbyists, start a club where we can exchange all of our goods. You know, I have a, you know, where you're like, hey, I have everything you need to do to make a quilt, a very elaborate quilt with embroidery. Here you go. I'm going to hand that to you, and you're going to hand me all of your, I don't know, like watercolor supplies. You know what I mean? And we'll go on. So go find a hobby. Moral of the story. And today will be diamond painting. Exactly. So just kind of, we got to switch it up. By the way, my, my buddy, Scott said, by the way, your buddy is adorable. I was like, who is here with me? For a second, I thought too, like a lot of times I'll tell my girls like, oh, you have a buddy in your nose, like, or something. So I was like, wait, do I once again have boogers in my nose? Cause I have very like demonstrative, nostrils, and they show like everything. Like it's very annoying. They don't like poke down like some people's who's like hide everything. No, mine, like if I have a booger in my nose, it's going to be there. And I have small children who point it out like no other. So that's a fun fact, a fun feature about myself that is there. But buddy turns out means hubby. My hubby is adorable. I will tell him that he has internet fans. He does. I usually think he's adorable. He's watching this, so we won't talk about, he might be watching this, so we won't talk about him. We just came off of a birthday weekend. You know, small children are difficult. I'm sure he is adorable. Liz, he's adorable. Tell yourself he's adorable. It's great. It's fine. Currently, I'm digging my hole bigger and bigger. Nurse Adrian said, oh God, Liz, I relate. I once built a camping trailer. Yes, we would get along in real life. The biggest, so I will tell you a random ADHD story, will lighten the mood, and then we will dive back into some of this advice for you. And I will give you self-care tips for your mental health. I forgot to say in the beginning, we're going to do timestamps. Hopefully people have figured that out if they're watching it later. but we'll cover new nurse advice and then we'll go over tips for dealing with patient death for your mental health. One time, camping trailer got me on this tangent. It's your fault, Nurse Adrian. We had a bathroom that was it was really ugly in our first house in Michigan. It was like one of those ranch style houses. And the bathroom was from like when they built it, whatever, in the 70s, 60s. Maybe, I think it was the 60s. And I came home one night from like a 12. This was before grad school, before children. And I was like, I'm going to take the tile off of the wall. Right? Do I know how to do that? Have I ever remodeled anything in my life? No, but I am fueled by the power of YouTube. Okay. And I went on to try to take the tile off of the wall. And Joe and I had agreed, I did consult before this. I said, I think I'm going to redo the tile. He's like, do you know how to redo the tile? I was like, no, but I'm going to YouTube it. And like, this old house is going to get me through this. It's fine. Went to go take it off and a chunk of drywall came off with my sledgehammer, which in hindsight probably wasn't like the best way to handle getting tile off the wall. But my ADHD brain was like hyper focused on this now. It was like, well, we're going to do this. So one fun feature about ADHD is like you like hyper fixate and then you get like kind of grandiose ideas. At least that's what mine does. And it's like, not only can you do this, but as soon as I broke the wall, I was like, I can also redo an entire bathroom because if I broke this one part of the wall, I might as well take it down to studs. And so while Joe was at work, I took the only bathroom in my house. We did have like a half bath, thank goodness, but we did not have another shower. And I took the whole bathroom down to studs. He was quite shocked when he came home. I was like, well, we don't have a floor or walls or shower. I was like, just prepare yourself. And that is my biggest ADHD related mistake. We did rebuild it. It looked very, very nice. But don't be me. Okay. That's possibly my biggest don't be me ever. Yes, YouTube University. I literally rebuilt my bathroom via YouTube and a lot of pure willpower. And it was interesting. I don't recommend that method. I do not recommend this. Keep in mind, she did this renovation very pregnant. Was I pregnant? I don't think I was pregnant. Maybe. Who said Kate, ADHD person too? I can go from bravado to shrinking flower in 20 minutes. Same. Your neighbors were wondering why you're using the outhouse. My neighbors were wondering. My neighbor did. I came outside and he was like, there's a lot of noise. I was like, I'm tearing out my bathroom. He's like, I didn't know you did construction or like that. I was like, I don't. He just like looked at me. He's like, okay. Take up a musical instrument. I play all woodwinds. Again, a feature of ADHD. I could just learn how to play the flute, or I could learn how to play all of the woodwinds. That is what we will definitely do. Wait until menopause. You'll just be dragging a sledgehammer around. I'm terrified for when this happens. I fear for everyone. Someone check on Joe when I hit that point. Okay. Oh, Siri's trying to talk to me. So pro tip really quick for new grads, study hard, be kind to yourself, stay curious, and don't let the turkeys get you down. Excellent advice. Brianna said, make friends with the patient care techs and EVS, environmental services. Is that what that abbreviation is for in your hospital? If so, I agree with making friends with everyone. Being kind and learning from everyone is one of the biggest things that I always told my new grad preceptees, because I learned so much from our nursing techs who taught me literally how to like talk with patients, how to do all the care. They knew where everything was. They had worked there a lot longer than we as the nurses were. And they would literally be like, I think you need to go and look at this. No, Liz, I really think you need to like go back and look at this. Don't be the nurse that just goes in and blows off your techs. Okay. Don't be that nurse. Be kind to people. Everyone knows how to do something. Environmental services. That is one of like the roughest jobs, being kind to them. Not only is one just very kind, but things magically can happen. Okay. If you're friends with environmental services and you're sending pages sometimes in the middle of the night to be like, oh my gosh, please help me, things might happen quicker if you're kind. Just saying. Transportation people, They will help you learn how to get to through the hospital. What are the best ways? Everyone can teach you something. Okay. Just be kind. Nurse Adrian said, get a therapist and a gym membership. I 100% recommend this. Absolutely. And there's no shame if you need to have a little bit of, store-bought serotonin or dopamine in the form of some like Zoloft or something during this time period, even if it's not forever. Even if it's not forever, friend, even if it's not forever. It never, Michaela says, it's never above anyone to ask for help. Please ask for help. Please ask for help. Goodness gracious, ask. I was always so much more scared of the people who never asked than asked all the time. At least I knew the people asking all the time, I could like kind of, be there, buddy, and see where we were going. But if you didn't ask, that's not good. Cody is starting nursing school in the fall as well. Happy to finally say hi. Wait, hello. Hello. Avoid OT, Nurse Adrian, and don't get caught up in the don't get caught up or believe anyone in management. Yeah, just say no. Yeah, I'm not available. No, I won't take that. I also have a fear of management. That's why I worked nights and weekends. It's like, if you don't know, I had managers who did not know I worked for them when they saw me in the elevator. They're like, oh, where do you work? I'm like, for you, for yours. It's fine. All's well. I just had Lydia Shepherd just had their first prereq for nursing school. It really does get better after your prereqs. Prereqs, just got to get through them. Pro tip, it doesn't become intuitive until 12 years in. Self-care is key. I bought a horse. I love that. That sounds very exciting. And yes, it does take a long time for it to become intuitive. I would say I cried every day for 6 months when I was a new nurse going into work because I was just terrified. I didn't have any confidence that like I would be able to handle whatever I showed up with. And then from 6 months to a year, I could imagine a world where like I knew how to handle some situations. And then after like probably like 2 years, nothing scared me. And then around 5 years, I would say maybe 4, I got to the point where I was just like, nothing fazed me. I did not I asked for help whenever I needed it. I knew how to do most everything. I had very few days where I felt like dumb because you had to ask for help with everything, but those days still happened. There was inevitably, right when you were feeling like you were hitting a groove, you had a day that come and slapped you in the face and you were like, I didn't know what to do all day. Always learn. You're going to always be learning. Just ask questions. Anne said lots of meditation. First I thought that said medication. I was like, okay, Anne, you're going right in for it. I'm with you. Lots of meditation, crafts, reading, learn to breathe with breathing techniques. Yeah. Little ways, breathing techniques are like tapping. I've seen some people like that. Something to kind of just like center you to the situation and kind of get through it. Boho says, don't sacrifice your health. If you don't feel well, call out because when you get to work, you will work. You don't owe anyone you don't owe it to anyone to come to work sick. Yes. And I feel like we're the next generation of nurselings are doing a better job about this, setting boundaries with work, realizing like work is really just like nursing is my job, not my life. So having an identity outside of nursing. Another tip I always gave new grads was if I ask you, like, tell me about yourself, I don't want your profession to be the first thing that comes out of your mouth. Maintain enough of an outside presence that you talk about that first too. All excellent. And there's a ton more excellent advice in here. I feel like I could read it absolutely forever. Thank you so much for, all of these nurselings. I love that name. Yes. And remember who said Kate. I remember the first time I was dressed as nurse, I looked around for someone else. Yes. Yes. The first time I remember being like, I'm your nurse today. And you were like, I'm your nurse. Oh gosh, I'm your nurse today. And I will honestly say it was 12 times worse when I was like, I'm your nurse practitioner, nurse practitioner. I'm in charge of you. I will be your primary care provider now. And I was like, how did let this happen? Let me see. Honestly, Thomas says, honestly, I think it does kind of flow the same way you were describing with the experience of not being fazed by anything. Yeah. Giovanni, this is live right now. How exciting. Woohoo. Okay. So, got a little sidetracked. Few tips. If any of you have them, I will share mine on dealing with kind of compartmentalizing after a patient dies, so that you can hop right back into it. One is just go take a moment, hide in the bathroom. Don't hide in the hallway. Kind of weird. Just don't do that. Go just sit and not even necessarily like process, you know what I mean? You don't need to, I wouldn't sit there and process my feelings. I would just go and do something else, like play, like watch a YouTube video or like play a game on my phone for like 5 minutes, literally to just trying to like get myself out of the situation. And then I could cope with it later. But in that moment of needing to like flip the switch, or I would run, like walk the stairs, because it's very difficult to have a lot of, this is sounding very unhealthy. Like this is not the best way to cope after you have a patient pass, but these were things I found helpful. I would go and I would climb the stairs because it's very difficult. That would like get your adrenaline pumping, right? And kind of like give you the boost to get through it. And probably because I was pretty out of shape. So like my body thought I was dying because I would climb like 11 double, like our flights of stairs were like double. So it was like climbing like 22 flights of stairs. I would go to the ground and back up. It's hard to have a lot of feelings when your body is like, I am going to die. Like I cannot do this. I found that helpful. Going and taking like a quick little break, watching like a funny video, like doing something that just kind of like took me out of it so I could then like refocus. And yeah, do not put your job on social media. And Anne said, going and climbing the stairs is perfect. It shakes you out. It does. And then kind of go back, recenter yourself, go out. And then I would go and check on all of my people. I would put off the emergency room as long as possible. You know, if they were like, oh, we have to give you a report, I was like, like I'm in the middle of doing postmortem care. Boop. So sorry if you're an ER person. Usually, honestly, after postmortem care, they would end up giving a report to my charge nurse because you were just so busy. And just taking a moment to, I always thought that it was better to walk into that next patient's admission room a minute or two late so that I could just like collect myself for a minute, especially if it was really emotional, than to go in straight after. And then afterwards, when you get home or whatever, like when you get to your car, I found that as I was walking to my car, as soon as I hit the parking garage, that was when my eyeball, like that's when I started to like feel, I'm like, I am going to have an eruption of emotions. Cry in your car, do whatever you need. I would write. I'm not like a huge journaler, but whatever you do, like whether it's talking it out loud, whether you know, kind of whatever gets you, I would either journal it out, like all my feelings, or I would talk in the car as if almost like, this was before YouTube days, almost as if I was making a YouTube video, but I didn't record it and it wasn't to anyone. I would just kind of like talk about it. If you have other people that were with you on the shift, like debriefing is really, really helpful. If it was like a code in particular, where it was really traumatic, but like talking to other people about it, it's odd, but it does help, especially in the beginning when you're like, haven't done postmortem care or whatever a lot, but journaling about it. And then I always had with me at work, in order to like, if I really needed to just, if I was like, oh my gosh, this is just like way too heavy and awful, I kept a notebook of things. I had different notebooks depending on my mood. I had like little folders that I kept in my locker. And one was when I needed to feel like I could do a good job. Like, cause you know, when you like have a day of mess ups and you're like, I can't do anything right. I had a folder full of things of other people, saying nice things about me, you know, like, oh, Liz was really nice in this situation, or she did this. And I would read that. Or if I had patients dying, I would read stories about, like read cards, or I would write down things that would remind me of patient situations where things went really, really right. Cause sometimes you just need to remember that like not everyone dies, because sometimes it feels like that, especially when it's a revolving door and it's like, oh, like this patient died, you have another admission, and then your one down the hall isn't doing well. They're going to die. You're going to get another admission. And it feels very business-like, just like yucky. And so remembering that like not everyone dies, is helpful. And so I would like kind of look at that, or just like funny things. Like if, you know, people had written me like funny cards, or just like whatever kind of gets you through it. And looking at that. So it's going to vary person to person, but do something after work to kind of process it. Do something to distract yourself immediately after, because you truly don't have time. that I thought was very, very true from that TikTok was you truly don't have time, whether or not you're processing it in the hallway. But delay initially, which isn't helpful, right? Because then, I mean, the whole thing is not helpful. It's not normal to go to work and see people die. But and just kind of like get through it. And Nurse Scott said, laughter can be used to cope with hard things and try not to judge. And this is a very good point. I saw, my opinions said I saw two nurses just standing outside laughing after the code ended, and it messed me up. And I will say, Nurse Adrian too said laughter is a coping mechanism, so please don't judge. It's a release. I will say that like this, I agree essentially with, I have laughed in situations that I don't understand why I laughed. You know what I mean? I would say surrounding really most of things at a healthcare job, I understand that it comes off and it looks really bad, right? I understand that, but your brain is literally trying to do everything it can to keep you from dealing with what you're seeing, right? It's because you can't, if you really take the second to like at the time break it down and be like, oh my gosh, like I just saw someone die. That's it's a lot for your brain to handle. And then to realize like you have all these other things going on. And I see like it still messes you up, even if you understand they move on. I wouldn't say they necessarily have moved on. I completely understand my opinions, like why it feels that way, that like, oh, I'm in this so much and they've moved on. Their brain quite literally might just be doing the only thing it can, which is like squashing it down and using humor to cope. Your brain literally being like, I can't think about that right now. Like, I cannot process that. That is too big of a thing for me to work through right now because I have 12 million other things I need to be dealing with. So we're going to find humor and we're going to pile it on top, and you're going to laugh, and someone else's brain is going to be like, yes, this is funny. And you do get like, that's why healthcare people usually do have the reputation of having weird, dark senses of humor, because your brain can only take so much. And then it starts to go down just like a dark, twisty path, like a dark, twisty past. And so I'll kind of echo the people who said, just try to hold back judgment. It's really I do not think that it's something that people do out of like conscious disrespect. If you're laughing, like, should you maybe try to not be in the hallway? Maybe, but sometimes like you don't even necessarily, like what you're doing. Teresa said, Liz reflexively laughed because you couldn't scream, WTF is happening here. Exactly. I made a lot of dark humor jokes, like, because I was that person. I was like, I have too many feelings. So I will kind of make, I guess, some kind of a joke about it. You know what I mean? Not a joke, but it's just like, it's hard. Trisha Jackson said, Nurse Scott, 100%. As someone who laughs in the worst situations when things shock and surprise me, I've been misunderstood so many times. It's not that I found it funny. It's just an instant reaction. Yeah. And usually it is. Your body is just like, I cannot handle, we're just going to like laugh. The same reason why like sometimes when you're talking about really hard things, you'll like smile, or laugh. And it's just, your brain is literally just like, I cannot handle this. I'm going to override this. And you're going to laugh. Like your brain is trying to keep you alive, right? And keep you functioning. And it recognizes when you're going down a dark, twisty something. The sentiment, OB nurse Chelsea said, that sentiment is what helped me out the most on my worst days after a particularly bad outcome. My coworkers and the docs reminding me of all the good we do. This was wildly helpful to me too. I would write down all the cases of, HIPAA compliantly, of course. But just of cases where I didn't think it was going to end up good and it ended up really good, that shocked me and like surprised me. And then eventually you start to have like hopefully more good than bad, right? But it's hard because in that moment, the bad seems like it can overcome everything. Like you can't think of all the good when you're faced with something so horrific. And so that can be really hard. Nursing student. Oh, thanks for being a member, nursing student. I appreciate you. If you want to be a member and get access to random perks that I'm still trying to figure out, you can do that below. I appreciate you. Where's my list? where's my list? I have a list, slightly outdated. So if you are a member and you don't see your name on here, but you want to be like these people? You want to be like these people? Perfect. Great. My second opinion told me I had to do that. So thanks for bearing with me. My therapist from nursing student told me to pick a mentally safe place. So when I could start to feel overwhelmed, I can take myself out for a minute and collect myself and move forward. I think that's excellent advice. You could, I don't know, go anything that's going to calm you down, right? And just kind of like allow you to mentally go like do something that's different and safe. A lot of times I would have like a Jolly Rancher or something really sour. I don't know why that just ended up working. I would have like a either a really like a lemon head or a lemon or like a sour apple Jolly Rancher or something, and that would almost help me like recenter, because I was like, oh my gosh, my tongue's gonna fall out of my head. Something to just take me out of the moment. Angelique said, probably not the best solution, but my night shift coworkers and I used to debrief at a local bar that opened at 7 a.m. I have done this, go and get breakfast. I think a lot of people do this. Most hospitals have a bar right down the road that is open at like 6 o'clock in the morning for exactly this reason. Again, probably like not always the best. I'm not recommending drinking all your problems away. I'm just being realistic that this happens. I have done it. It is helpful. Don't do it all the time. I sang Nurse Scott said, I game, good night, sweetheart, to every person I bagged up. I hope someone sings with me when I die. I can't handle this right now. This is where I'm going to awkwardly cry or awkwardly laugh, because this is the sweetest thing ever. Oh, you're a good human. Giovanni said, thank you for being transparent, Liz, especially in this age when we are judged for every single thing. Yeah. Nurse Scott said, when my dad died, my brother and sister and I and all grieved so differently. And we were so fortunate that we respected those differences. Absolutely. And grief never looks the same. Nurses handling grief never looks the same. Family grieving looks very, very different. So that's another thing we can kind of look at with like patients, family members, when they're losing a loved one. It can be easy to be like, why are they, they're not grieving the right way. They aren't really feeling this, whatever, when really it might just be that their brain is doing what it needs to protect them, or it could be even culturally different. I've seen that a lot of times too. Let me see who Nurse Scott, who said, Kate said, I used to hum songs to people as I did postmortem too. It was my last duty for them. You guys, that's the sweetest. Oh, it like makes me happy that other people that I love that. I love that. See, I'm not alone. So many serenaders. I'm really glad you're not alone, Scott. I love that idea of like singing a lullaby or something to patients. As you were doing that and making it like a much more like serene moment. I always talk to my people like as if they were still not, as if they were still here. But I like the idea of singing to them. That's kind of nice. Michaela said, I am an expert at avoiding my own feelings. We are like peanut butter and jelly for sure. I think a lot of the times too, it took me a long time, like over a year, to realize like, one, this is weird that I go to work and people die. And it has taken me a very long time. Like it hits you at the weirdest points where you're like, oh my gosh. And you'll just get, or at least I do, I'll get like really upset. And you just kind of like, it hits you, right? That this is a weird career where you got used to a lot of weird things, sometimes you'll be like having conversation and you'll be like, oh yeah, like, oh, well, once people die, you can't roll them over super fast because then everything, all the stuff comes out of their mouth, and people are like, who are not in healthcare are like, excuse me, what? And you're like, hey, you're like, never mind. Like, I know a lot of things about this. Nurse Adrian said, if I sang, I'm pretty sure they'd come back to life and they'd tell me to shut up. No, I'm sure they would love it. Trisha said the same thing about my singing. Megan, I talked to my people too. It was less intimidating for me. Exactly. I talked to my people about everything, even if they weren't really conscious. I was talking to them. That's obviously how I process things, and YouTube. But I talk to all my patients probably to the point of them being like, this nurse needs to shut up. 12-year bedside, Adrian, there were definitely a few patients I remember 100% for sure. Who said, Kate says, sometimes I'll see a patient on TV that reminds me of my favorite patient that had passed, and I'll get a little bit teary-eyed. Exactly. Like it hits you in the weirdest spot. And like, I haven't done this in a long time. And feelings, I have big ones. There's so many feelings. All right, friends. I think those are all of my tips for coping with after a patient dies. Very different after like a code, kind of the same, but you need more. I feel like codes need more debriefing than just like when your patient passes. I mean, unless the events were combined. But I needed more just like, how am I going to continue when I've just been faced with so much mortality? Let me get picked up and like motivated through this so that I can deal with it later. And then please do deal with it later in whatever way that ends up being helpful for you, and try different things out. You know, you might not know you're a journaler until you try journaling, or you need to like spill all your feelings out to your dog or your car on the way home. You know, maybe you're one of those people that processes their emotions through exercise. Bless you. I don't know. I wish I was more like you, but I'm not. It's fine. And thanks for all your advice in the chat. I think you guys have a bunch of super duper helpful insight. It is okay to cry. It is absolutely okay to cry. I embrace that motto. I plan my cries sometimes. Sometimes I'm having a very fine day, perfectly fine day, but I just feel a lot of like feelings like at, you know, like simmering under the radar, and like nothing is wrong that day. Things are like pretty good. And I will like tell my family, I'm like, I'm going to need to cry later. I'll wait till the kids go to bed, but I'm going to need to have a really big cry. Just like, what's wrong? I'm like, nothing. I just haven't cried in a while. I was like, I think I just need to get it out of my system. I will try to plan it at a time that's convenient for everyone. Dolores, who said, Kate said, Dolores, my pug gets an earful sometimes. I love that you named your pug Dolores. That's amazing. Nurse Adrian, thank you for all of your insight on this topic. It's been very, very helpful. Giovanni says on the drive home, I cry. Me too. I was like, I like I said, I got to the parking garage and it was just like, like, oh, learning that it is okay to cry was a huge lesson for me. Yes. Learning that you are not your emotions, that your emotions are something that are not permanent, that it's like every emotion is okay. And you're just going to kind of like pass through it, and you can't control the emotion, right? That took me a long time to learn, because I would feel ashamed of a lot of the emotions I felt around, especially around healthcare. Like either I don't want to do this anymore, or this is so like, why am I so sad about this? And realizing that the emotion was not something I could control, that the emotion was not good or bad. The emotion was telling me something. So maybe I needed to like look at it and be like, hey, what is this telling me? Do I need to do something different? Do I need to find a different thing to like help me process it? The only thing you can control in that moment is your emotions or your actions, right? So what are you doing with this information? And emotion is just your body giving you information, and you can do something with it. So that's all you can control. So just remember that no emotion is bad. No emotion is embarrassing. It simply is. And it's what you do with it. It's information. That's what I would tell you. It's just information, and you do that with that what you will. Just don't harm others with it. Okay. Don't harm others with it. When I need to cry, I tell myself it's okay to not be okay. And it works every time. Yes. Absolutely. Future topic. What are you nursing students most worried about? And let the elders set them straight. I'm here for that. I'm here for that. I will be your wise elder. Put a thumbs up or some kind of a happy emoji in the chat if this sounds like a good idea. And if we get enough happy emojis, then Nurse Scott, we shall do this. Let me know if you want to do it on my channel or yours, and we will give the youths our sage advice. It'll be good. Trisha Jackson said, having too much control over your emotions is an awful thing. I spent years being in perfect control of my emotions, and it was awful. It takes a lot of energy, my friend, to do that. And I agree. Therapy does really help, but then therapy brings up all this other stuff. And I There's a lot of feelings. I'll be your cool gay aunt. Awesome, Adrian. Adrian, if you ever want to be in one of the panel chats, email me. Second opinion, put my email in the chat, please. Pretty please. Let's see, because you're more than welcome to. It's pretty much how I find people. I'm like, oh yeah, you've commented a lot. Welcome. You're part of the crew. You are mine now. You'll be here for sure. Yeah, for sure. Perfect. Rachel, can you put my email in the chat? And then when you email me, Adrian, put it in all caps because I'm horrible at reading emails. Nursing student and Michaela and Cody all gave positive emojis. Thank you for participating in the experiment. And perfect. So Scott said, because that comes up a lot in any live stream. Yes, it does. You host. My channel is tiny. Perfect. Perfect. We will host. We'll talk about advice for new nurses. You can bring your worries and I will either add to them. I will add to them while Scott helps you calm down, essentially. It's usually how this goes. You're like, I'm worried about this. I'm like, you should be. You should be. That is a hot minute. That is a hot mess. You were worried about that. Well, let me tell you what else you should be worried about. And Scott's going to come in with his little like sanity balloon and he's going to be like, Liz, it's going to be okay, everyone. And I'll take over and it'll be fine. OB nurse Chelsea also is usually very rational. I'm not sure about Adrian. Adrian and I might be taking you off in a different direction. And depending on who else shows up, you might be in trouble. So you've been warned. You've been warned. It's going to be fine. Perfect. Got you. I'll stalk you. Perfect. I appreciate that. Coralan says death is a part of life. It's healthy to share. This is a good space for nurselings. Love NurseTube. Oh, thanks. Yes. We're making NurseTube a thing. We're making it a thing. Tell all your friends. All right. Nurse Scott, who said Kate said Nurse Scott can charm birds out of a tree with his calmness. It's very true. It's very, very true. Depends on my Nurse Scott. I'm going to tell a story about him for a moment. He had like an emergency in his home while I was live streaming and he was on the panel, like a legitimate emergency in his home. He just like casually like muted and like didn't even leave, just kind of like put on the screensaver thing, dealt with the emergency that like would have had me like in hysterics, right? Unable to cope. 911 would have been called. He says, okay, go tell it. His apartment caught on fire. It's like filling up with smoke while we're on a live stream. He just like very quietly, he's like, I'll be right back. Like in the private chat, he's like, I'm just going to be right back. I was like, oh, okay, for sure. Go. He comes back like a few minutes later. We're like, oh, okay. Like, are you okay? And in the chat, he's like, everything's fine. It just like my house just caught on fire, but like, it's totally fine. Like all is well. Like nothing ever. No. I was like, I would be like sobbing on the phone with 911, like tearing everything apart. He worked in the emergency department. Absolutely, I understand. Absolutely. So this was on, okay, this one was on the LGBTQ plus video and see the air in my apartment clear as time goes on. So everybody, we did this is on, okay, good. I was hoping you would remember what video it was on. It was on the LGBTQ plus video where we talked about different things that I had a panel on of people who were part of the LGBTQIA plus community, and they just talked about different things that they wish people knew. I learned a lot. I had a lot of things pointed out to me of like, hey, you've been doing this the whole time. And like, here's actually a better way you could probably do it. Things they wish people knew, experiences working in healthcare. If they were out, if they weren't, if they talked about things, what their experiences have been like. We talked about acts like things to include when you're just like making conversations easily acceptable using pronouns, all of that stuff. That's all that video. It was a really great video. Nurse Adrian said, I thought there was a haze. Yes. Apparently it cleared. Shows you how much, I pay attention because I was like, there was a fire. Like, what are you talking about? But yes, that video was excellent. A lot of great people on that panel too. It was fun. We learned a lot, and Scott's apartment caught on fire. So, It's fine. That's what happens when too many good-looking people get together. Okay. That's just what happens. Um, Georgia said, please mentor students on patient privacy. We could do one of those at some point, like what to put on social media and what not to put on it. I'm not very good at that. I probably have overshared in my life. But we could do one on that. What not to put on social media? Basically nothing. But we could do one on that because yes, there are things you can put on there and how to like get around HIPAA. Sierra said, I feel like I cry so much now more than ever after working as a COVID ICU travel nurse. Oh, I cannot imagine for sure. You got to like let it out though and process it. That's good. Never cried before. Is anyone else experiencing this? I would imagine, I mean, I have not worked as a COVID ICU travel nurse, but I have been much more emotionally fragile and angry since COVID happened. So that's mine. That's my experience. I can't speak to anyone else. But that's my experience. This is my emotions have gone from like being able to cope to, I mean, if you've been watching my channel, you've kind of seen me just like fall off the deep end of like, this is fine to like not fine. And we're still working on finding our fine. One day we might find it, but there's a lot more feelings here now. So welcome. I have Kiriki said, I love passing down whatever knowledge I know to new nurses. You know, the stuff they don't teach in school. Like it's okay to cry. We don't have to be stoic all the time. Yes. You don't have to be, it's okay to cry. It's okay to show emotions in front of your patients, especially if it's a really difficult situation, right? To show them like, hey, this is fine. But also like Nurse Scott said that not all of us cry. Yeah. But the absence of crying and doing some other coping mechanism, like laughing, doesn't mean you care any less. It means your brain is like just trying to cope. So I think just being an accepting, understanding of like everybody, understanding everybody and like doing all of that would be helpful. Liz, I would enjoy answering questions and mentoring. Perfect. Also email me at the email, my lovely second opinion. That's what we're calling my sister who runs my life. She put it up in the chat like a wee bit. So email me and I have a list of when I do a panel discussion, I just like blast it out to all sorts of people. And you can get on that list. I probably should come up with a better way of vetting people. Nurse Scott, I got lucky with. I feel like he's co-running my life with me now also. He was in the chat of a lot of my lives. So I was like, obviously you're making the list. Other people, OB nurse, got in there. Who else do we have? Mama nurse. She got in like just from being in the comment section. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. You can come on my channel. These people might be like, who knows? Who knows? Nurse Scott said with short notice. Yes. But now we know it's at Thursday at 3. Okay. The topic might be a surprise, but I actually have the next few weeks planned out, but Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Okay. Thursday at 3. That's when we're going to be doing our panel panel discussions. This Thursday, we are going to be talking about, I already have it planned. Scott, you'll be thrilled. I thought of you when I was writing the email. I got distracted because ADHD feature right there. Got distracted, didn't send the email, but Thursday at 3 p.m. Yes, hopefully Thursday at 3 p.m. works for you. Thursday, 3 p.m. We're talking about the members, channel members. I put it up to them and they wanted to have a video from the panel about, oh my gosh, my brain. It's like not remote nursing. It's about like nurses who are like zoomed into a hospital and they're like, watch virtual nursing. Thank you. Second opinion, virtual nursing. Virtual nursing is what we're going to be talking about. Essentially, nurses that are watching all the time they can like pop into your hospital room and then they can assess you, they say, and hear your concerns. And then they call the nurse that can actually do something. We're going to discuss proposed pros, proposed cons. Con would be in my mind, like, you can literally pop in whenever, like all of a sudden they're just on your TV. That seems invasive to me. I've heard of, them like signing off on assessments for like if you have an LPN on the team, LPNs in a lot of states have to have their assessment signed off by an RN. So the RN virtual nurse will sign off on an assessment. I'm like, I mean, when I did that, we didn't really actually check the LPNs because the LPNs were the ones that like knew way more than us. But like, at least we weren't on a TV. Like, we could pretend in real life that we went in and looked at the human. But yeah, it'll be interesting. So, Scott, I'm assuming I'll see you there. And anyone else? Carol Ann said, looking forward to the panel, virtual nursing, interesting topic. Yes. Now I'll never see the lives because I work Thursday. So those are just the panel ones. And I had to pick a day. You can blame my second opinion. I always will do these Tuesday night. So we're trying to make a schedule. I have one in the evening and one during the day to try to balance out with people. It sounds like you need a new job, Michaela. Sounds like you need a new job. Don't know what to tell you. I am sorry. But these are going to stay on Tuesdays. Hopefully that day works. And yes, yes, I got a job offer for this once. We would watch the patient via monitor, but a nurse would also be at the bedside. That's bonkers. That is crazy. Sierra, if you're available on Thursday, please come. That will be fascinating to chat about. Okay. That reminds me of the Disney movie with the smart house that takes the family hostage. That's kind of what it seems like. I agree. All right, friends. I appreciate you being here. Thank you for adding to this discussion. Thank you for, I feel like we had a lot of really good, Nurse Adrian, virtual nursing, aka the outsourcing of nursing to developing nation nurses. Yeah, yikes. I feel like we had a lot of good discussion today, and that was all because of you. And I very much appreciate it. If you are watching this on the replay and you've made it this long, congratulations. I appreciate you for being here. If you do like these, if you could just improve the vital signs of the video by liking it, commenting somewhere, sharing, or binging a whole playlist, it's always appreciated. Like Who Said Kate said, I feel like Who Said Kate is my personal PR person. Like and subscribe. I appreciate it. And yeah, Scott, we're going to get there. We're going to get, my second opinion requires me to say all of these things. She says it helps with my analytics. So we have to do this to make her happy. Otherwise, she might make my life miserable. Cody Esterline, have a lovely evening. I will see you all on Thursday. Thursday. I hope you always remember that you are more than enough, my friends. You can do, well, we got the order wrong. You are more than enough. You are not alone. As you can see, there are so many people here with you tonight who are feeling the things. You are not alone. And you, my friend, can do hard things. I hope you have a beautiful evening. Thanks for spending some time with me. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Now we find the thing that goes at the end. Where is it? Here. Oh, there's a comment still. Goodbye. Sorry, Cody.